Distinguished Chair, Dr. Elmer Lenzen, Excellencies, Ministers, Permanent Representatives, wonderful friends, welcome to the Global Goals Forum 2022. My name is Jorge Laguna-Celis, and I am the head of the One Planet Network hosted by the United Nations Environment Programme. We are, as a matter of fact, a global network of practitioners, policymakers, and experts working on achieving SDG 12. What is SDG 12 all about? It's about ensuring sustainable patterns of consumption and production. Today, I have the great privilege of delivering a few opening thoughts to help frame the critical themes of discussions we will be exploring across today's range of panels, dialogues on this year's theme for the forum, which has been set as Rethinking Globalization. I am very grateful to the Global Goals Forum organizing partners for providing me with this opportunity to address you all. Dear friends, if there was ever a point in our recent history where governments, business, society, and individuals needed to rethink globalization, it is surely now. We are living through extremely dynamic and uncertain times, whether it be from recovering from COVID pandemic or enduring increasingly extreme climate events, responding to the current war taking place in Europe, or to the enormous crisis that we are seeing worldwide, ongoing global economic pressures that are being generated through these exceptional times that we are living, the traditional concept of globalization is challenged at every turn. Yet, the foundations upon which globalization is built, the free movement of goods, services, and people, is still highly relevant and important currency in today's world. Delivering access to new markets, increased levels of investment, higher efficiency, and promoting multiculturalism, that means depending on who you are, the traditional concept of globalization has opportunities positioned at its core. Furthermore, the rapid rise of technological innovation has supercharged globalization, transforming the common notions of trade, work, and travel. However, dear friends, in recent years we have seen some countries retreat from globalization in both spirit and practice, whether it be increasing trade tariffs, whether it be driving supply chain stagnation or lower levels of international investment, whether it be driving conflict also and political pressures. Some have argued that we are now entering a phase of de-globalization. I am sure that our panels today will discuss the issue of, is globalization in reverse? Are we questioning the fundamentals of globalization? We will unpack today these ideas further and understand what are the added benefits, the added value of globalization, but also the things that need to be corrected. Is it true that globalization in its traditional form hasn't been without its drawbacks? This question, we believe it has absolutely to be responded in the context of this forum. We all agree that globalization has not benefited us all equally. Local cultures and customs have sometimes become homogenized or forgotten. We are also seeing the most important critical element of increased global inequalities. But most critically of all, the environment has paid a heavy price, a heavy cost for our ambitions in terms of pollution, biodiversity loss, and climate change trends. Here are some sobering facts that I would like to offer to you today. The IPCC report now states that global temperatures are 1.2 degrees warmer than the pre-industrial average. This has resulted in measurable increases in disasters such as floods, extreme heat, more intense hurricane, and longer burning wildfires. These are putting human lives in danger. At present, the projected global emissions from national pledges place limiting global warming to 1.5 centigrades beyond reach. In a 2020 WWF report, we have learned that the world has seen an average of 68% drop in mammal, bird, fish, reptile and amphibian populations since 1970. This data is further strengthened also by the United Nations International Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Service. We are seeing the natural capital of our world, our common home, dwindling in an extremely fast manner, coinciding as well with the rise of globalization. So we have to take these sovereign facts into account. Now, it would be unfair to say that this negative global environmental picture is due solely to globalization. But what this bleak outlook shows is that without adequate global responses, the very foundations upon which globalization is built, a healthy and productive environment, a healthy and productive society, is now endangering its very existence. So, if the old model of globalization is no longer fit for purpose, for a present and future defined by sustainable development, is it the option to abandon completely? I don't think so. What might be the next iteration of globalization to look like through the power of digitalization, through the emergence of increasingly interconnected markets, through the predominance of global value chains, through the fact that social media and increased connections that we see across the world driving cultural messages, also driving hints that create consumption and demands. What would these important factors impact our mode of living and the future of globalization? The discussions, therefore, and dialogues today will help feed into the ongoing conversation, trying to address that question. But for now, I will briefly share one theme I believe must be at the heart of any form or evolution of globalization that serves people and planet. This is sustainable consumption and production. Dear friends, ever since the Industrial Revolution in the 18th century, the way individuals and societies have consumed and produced goods has largely been based on a linear make, take, and throwaway approach. This practice has required the exploitation of vast natural resources and the natural world more broadly to fuel production of goods that are often short-lived and are not made to be reused or recycled. Added to that global population of presently 7.8 billion, each one a consumer to a greater or lesser extent, which then again brings the issues of inequalities, overconsumption and underconsumption to the forefront of our discussions on a globalization that works for all. What I mean is that unsustainable consumption and production has become the norm. In fact, according to the United Nations, sustaining current levels of consumption and production requires the equivalent of nearly 2 Earths in terms of resources. And if the trend continues, we will need 3 Earths by 2050. Put it in another way, unsustainable consumption and production is the main cause of the triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. This has to change. In 1992, the first attempts were made at the international level at the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development. What you might have heard was called the Earth Summit. Member states adopted the Rio Declaration on Environment and Development, which called on states to reduce and eliminate unsustainable patterns of production and consumption. They also created very important principles that guide today our international architecture that governs the international environment. For example, the polluter pays principle and other important principles that guide and promote international cooperation and responsibilities in the degradation of the global environment. Yet, realizing these and creating and implementing sustainable consumption and production systems has been extremely challenging, including in the context of our previous globalization, and continues to pose deep and searching questions regarding how society currently operates. It is in this area the central focus of work that we are currently involved in. As head of UNEP's One Planet Network, I lead a team that works with global community of practitioners, policymakers, private sector representatives, and experts, including governments, businesses, civil society, academia, and international organizations, to advance sustainable consumption and production patterns. We focus our attention on 6 high-impact sectors and enabling systems that help us promote a shift in the way we produce and consume. These are sectors such as the sustainable buildings and construction, the sustainable food systems, and sustainable tourism. Tourism, food systems, construction, and transportation are driving the broadest global impacts in the use of the natural resources. Now we add to our work the enabling programs, which are sustainable lifestyles and education, sustainable public procurement, the way governments make purchases, how do they act as consumer, and consumer information. Within these areas, we possess expertise, global networks, resources, and tools for radically changing how we produce and consume, including by looking at the impact of digitalization and circularity. As an organization, we are entering an exciting and impact period of growth and opportunity. While still too slow, our reports indicate that more countries, governments, and organizations are becoming aware of the fundamental role that sustainable consumption can play within their economies as the key vehicle for achieving many of the Sustainable Development Goals. As a result, our mandate to lead this agenda across the United Nations and further afield has been strengthened until 2030. This expansion, in connection to a global drive to implement the Global Sustainable Development Goals, is matched by a soon-to-be-released Global Strategy for Sustainable Consumption and Production, which has brought thousands of voices and all member states together to present a number of priorities and pathways on how to rapidly accelerate the implementation of sustainable consumption and production practices across the high-impact sectors that drive our economies. If there is one key insight I have gained from developing and leading the work in cooperation with all these partners of creating this global strategy, it is the critical importance of including a diverse and non-traditional stakeholders at every stage of the design, creation, and implementation process. Not only do these voices highlight blind spots within your own conceptions and solutions that we may present, they also help us ensure that there is a collective buying in and ownership for new ideas, which is a prerequisite for delivering sustainable solutions and policies and partnerships. As globalization evolves and is redefined, this same methodology is key for helping to ensure it can deliver its promise to as many actors as possible. I am looking forward to the panel discussion entitled, "How Can We Balance Planet, Purpose, and Profit?" This is indeed the win-win-win equation that we would like to see discussed in the context of our forum. We look forward to hearing further the recommendations that you have and your own perspectives that you bring to the table. Now, many policymakers have put forward ideas as to new or types of new forms of globalizations that will take place in the future. Many believe that its scope will move beyond purely people, goods, and commodities as the main elements that define it, in favor of a better understanding on the role of service, data, information, research, development, traditions. Some evidence already suggests that this is happening. Global services trade now represent 25% of the global total trade, and it has been growing faster than goods for several years. With significant advances in technological innovation, global data flows too have increased exponentially. We now have to understand how can these help us change that linear model that we discussed at the beginning of our discussion. But in whichever way globalization may be reimagined, it can only be truly resilient and endure in a changing world if it is founded upon sustainable consumption and production principles that protect our environment so the environment can in turn support us all. This is why we believe at the One Planet Network that it is critical we change the way we speak and think about globalization in a manner that is consistent with our patterns of sustainable consumption and production. That we look at circularity as an opportunity to reconcile globalization with the planet and people. I wish all forum participants a very productive and engaging day, exploring critical themes, building new networks and relationships, advancing in this digital era the conversation on what is required to bring us back on track to 2030 and to the Sustainable Development Goals, and achieve a nature-positive future for all. Thank you for inviting us to take part in this exciting forum. We look forward to add our contribution to a more resilient, sustainable economy for all. Thank you.